How's it going, guys? My name is Royal, and this week's episode of The Owl House ends with what is quite possibly the most badass, inspiring, hype-inducing moment of the series so far. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll curse the fact that we have to wait another week for a new episode. Today, we're going to talk about this week's episode of The Owl House, O Titan, Where Art Thou? In this episode, Luce, King, and Hooty return to the Owl House to find it desolate and empty after the Emperor's Coven raided it, seizing everything inside. There, they find a note from Lilith guiding them to their hideout at the Knee, despite Ida's wish for the kids to stay as far away as possible. Reunited, Lilith is awestruck by the revelation that King is a Titan, but Ida insists that he's still the same old king and should be treated like a Clawthorn nonetheless. As they await the Day of Unity, Ida lies and tells Luce that their plan will need more time, so she gives Luce a choice of how she'd like to spend her last normal day. Luce decides to spend the day rescuing Francois from the Emperor's Coven, but things don't go well when she discovers Ida speaking to Rain through a crystal ball, begging them to take Luce and King far away from danger. Meanwhile, King sets off on a soul-searching adventure with Steve, who's also trying to find his way after leaving the Emperor's Coven, with Lilith in hot pursuit believing King to be kidnapped. After a tearful battle, the episode ends with Ida, Lilith, King, Hooty, and Luce finally meeting the rebels against the Emperor. And after being newly inspired by their new allies, Ida offers to finally help Luce carve her palisman out of the last bit of Palistrom wood she managed to save. Okay, so there's obviously a lot to talk about with this one, and yes, I say that every episode, but this time I really mean it. But first, let me start off with talking about how f***ing sad this episode is. The fight between Ida and Luce was so unexpected and heartbreaking, but it really did seem like it might be the only way forward. Luce loves the Isles, she loves her new family, and the idea that Ida could just send her away against her will would send anyone into a desperate rage to flee and fight. And Ida, who feels guilty about putting her kids in danger, wants nothing more than to protect them, even if they'll hate her for it. It really was the culmination of all of the heartache and confusion they've been through together up to this point. And as necessary as it might have been, it was still super painful to see. Seeing the tears in Luce's eyes as she struggles to understand why Ida wouldn't want her around was enough to make a grown man cry. And he did. Some of the biggest character development in this episode came from, of course, King, who, after discovering that he has all of the power he'd ever wanted, he realizes that he doesn't want anyone to fear or worship him. Instead, he just wants to have a family, friends, and people who care about him, and he's happy knowing that he cares about them too. It's a really touching moment, but once again, my heart can barely take it, considering that it's big character arcs like this coming to a close that tell you when a series is nearing its last days. And yet, I still think we're climbing to the top of this emotional roller coaster, and it'll be a hell of a drop. Anyway, getting back to the plot of this episode, this one begins with King projecting himself through his dream into the same realm between realms that Luce was stuck in. And there he finds the Collector, who is desperate to no longer be alone and is eager to hear another voice, only to desperately beg for them to not go away. This is important for a lot of reasons, maybe too many to get to in this video, but one thing I want to focus on is what the Collector is saying.
I won't be alone. I won't be alone anymore. Hello? Hello? Who said that? Who's there? What? Wait, don't leave! Come back!
As honestly hesitant as I am to say this makes the Collector seem kind of just like a lost, lonely kid. Obviously, the Collector is some ancient evil obsessed with death and destruction, but here he seems genuinely sad and alone. This is the first time since he's debuted that I'm willing to believe that there might be more to the Collector. He could just be another figure with a tragic past, another character worthy of redemption, or at least understanding. Up to this point, he's been more like a Bill Cipher character with no morals or purpose, driven only by a selfish desire and a primordial attraction to chaos. But here he seems like a victim, trapped, scared, alone, and desperate for someone to talk to. It's strange seeing this side of him when the only other time he's been shown, he was happily awaiting the death of magic and the destruction of the Isles. I hope I'm not reading too much into this, but seeing just how much the Owl House team has been keeping the Collector under wraps, and how this is King's first impression of him, leads me to think that it's worth exploring these questions. This episode, like the last few episodes, had some really great action as well, as painful as it might have been, but one thing that really surprised me was just how easily Harpy Ida was defeated by a couple of Abomatons. Like last week's episode, we've seen just what these things can do, and it's not pretty. It's possible that Darius and maybe even Amity can control them or at least counter them in combat, but it's important to remember that Belos has an army of these things. And they're way more dangerous and formidable than any number of Coven scouts. As powerful as the members of the Cats might be, it's still clear that they have a hell of a fight ahead of them as the battle draws closer. And speaking of the Cats...
Everything's come full circle, baby!
Holy shit, that ending. Luce finally meets Rain, Luce is about to carve her palisman, the rebels have a plan to stop Belos, so much to get excited about for next episode. I cannot wait to see what Luz ends up carving and how she uses her new staff. Luz has been one of the most capable magic users shown in the series so far, and it seems that for whatever reason, humans are uniquely gifted when it comes to wielding wild magic. So Luz with a staff just sounds amazing. I'll probably make a whole video dedicated to some of my favorite picks for Luz's eventual talisman, but definitely let me know down in the comments below what you think she'll be going with. I love that Luz's true power, like many great adventure protagonists, is her ability to make friends and change the hearts and minds of her enemies. And the idea that Luz's talisman wouldn't like her is insane. And again, I'm wondering if Luz will manage to get through to Philip, but I won't hold my breath. Lastly, that callback to the first episode was totally unexpected, but amazing.
Meow meow.
The cats are gonna absolutely tear shit up, and I am here for it. Some more last minute things to touch on before we wrap up this video. I find it interesting that Amity said her mother took away her pentagram because my only question is why? Is it because of the rebellion at school? Does she think the other students are a bad influence on her? Is she still unquestionably loyal to the Emperor? It's hard to say, but it seems like Odalia is still up to her usual bullshit, and I can't wait to see Amity show her parents the government-toppling rebel she is. Also, I wanted to touch on something strange I've noticed in this episode and in another episode as well. In this episode, there's a flashback to when Luz tells King he's a Titan, and I noticed they slipped in a line of dialogue that isn't in the original episode.
You're a Titan, King. You're the son of the Boiling Isles.
I'm wondering why they've done this twice now, where they add in a line of dialogue to a flashback that wasn't in the original scene, but there probably isn't too much to this. Maybe they just thought it would convey the point a little bit better, but I did think it was a little strange. Aside from that, we got to see everyone's new Wanted posters in this episode, and they all look amazing. I particularly like Tube Demon's poster and Lilith's poster, although they're all great. Hopefully we'll get some of these posters as merch in the future, that would be awesome. I also love how Lilith gets called on her tendency to cozy up to power and her pathological desire to serve. I think Lilith has made a lot of strides in her character since the series started, but I think she's one of the few characters who still hasn't found out who she wants to be. Sure, she knows she's a bad girl historian, but I still don't think she's ready to let her guard down and be comfortable in her own skin without reverting back to her previous dependence on being useful to someone. Maybe she just needs to find that special someone. And speaking of, this episode also sets up a bit of a ship between Lilith and Steve, who I think was the obvious choice since Steve was introduced back in season 1, but now that he's part of the cats and that he's been close to Lilith, I think it might be a ship that they'll explore in future episodes. But with as many ships as there are in the series, I wouldn't be surprised if they just left this one to the imagination. But I did love Hootie's eagerness to attack Steve after seeing Lilith blush, and I can't help but think there might be some jealousy there, even if it is only about the idea of someone taking away his best friend. Alright everybody, that's gonna have to do it for this video. We've only got 2 episodes left, and while it's sad to think that the season will be ending soon, I'm insanely hyped about what's to come. I'm also working on some bonus videos as a way of celebrating the series so far, so be sure to subscribe for more Owl House content. What did you guys think of the episode? What kind of talisman do you think Luz will make? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.